Hello, my name is Leonard Beddow.
Where and when were you born?
6/10/1923. Bilston. Number 6, Sankey Street.
So how old are you right now?
95.
Do you feel like you're 95?
No.
How old do you feel?
Me? 21.
Physically, what is it like to be 95?
Rotten. It's joints stiffening up. Well, that's all I can say really. The joints are stiffening up. And
What branch of the service were you in during World War II?
well, Royal Tank Regiment, 24th Lancers, Sherwood Rangers. That's it. That's in the combat time, yeah.
What squadron?
C Squadron.
And what was your specific job in C Squadron?
Gunner.
And tell me about the job of a gunner on a tank.
Well, yeah. As a gunner, you have to look after the guns, make sure they're clean and ready to fire. I check, well, in the American tanks, the periscope had the telescopic lens in as well. So if you got the periscope in front of you, you could also see through the telescope. I first saw combat 6th of June 1944.
What beach did you all land on?
What am I? Oh, Sword Beach. Do you want the story behind that? Well, we were supposed to land on Gold Beach, but there's so much activity going on in Gold Beach we couldn't get close enough. Now the captain of the ship, who was American, took us round to Sword Beach where we landed in about 3 foot of water.
Around what time?
It should be around about 12 o'clock on D-Day itself.
Were you guys taking on fire once you landed on Sword Beach?
No, the action had gone farther inland by the time we got there.
So take me through your first experience in combat.
Well, I can tell you what happened when we first landed on Sword Beach. Was the first thing we saw was a double rainbow. And the colonel of the regiment said, "Look at that, Arc de Triomphe." And we travelled then to about 6 miles inland without much opposition. And we were told to stay there because we were too far in front. So we had to stay where we are, 6 miles into Lager, and go into reserve. And that was it. We didn't see any more action that day, but the next day was fully in action.
Take me through your first experience in combat.
My first experience, well, to be on Hill 112, I think, yeah. The German infantry was trying to infiltrate through the cornfields, so we had the machine gun, so they drove them back, and they brought the tanks up. On the first German tank to appear, I knocked it out. And after that, I'm trying to visualise it now. There was a Panther tank in the background, about 500 yards away, firing shells at us. And as the shells went past, our tank shuddered. So I got onto the German tank, and I fired at it. And my shell just ricocheted off its turret. So I fired again, same thing happened again. Our shells just ricocheted off the German turret. But the German tank crew got out and fled. And we found out why afterwards, because my shells had hit the telescope attached to the German gun. So they were virtually blind. And that put them out of action. That was the first action. And after that, it was just a melee. well, I can't remember the name of the villages now when we advanced through different villages. And my job as a gunner was to knock out the church temple, the steeples, in case they're occupied by Germans and spotters. And so I just had to knock the church steeples out and any high buildings. After that, it's just more advancing, keep on advancing. And then there was one time, it would be about 11 o'clock at night, and the infantry were in position, but they was a bit wary, and they wanted a tank to support them. So the tank I was in, it was a lieutenant's tank at the time, I don't know his name, and we had to go up there with the infantry on a ridge and stay there all night with the infantry, give them support. And all night long we had 20mm cannon shells ricocheted off the tank. But the lieutenant didn't stay with the tank. He went off to liaise with the infantry officer, so we were left in the tank on our own. But nothing happened, so we were all right. We got away next morning with no problems. And after that, it was a continual. Well, I can't remember all the actions I took part in, but it was continual actions, you might say, right through to the Falaise Gap. That's where the next incident I really remember, as the tanks were advancing. I was in reserve at the time, and there was an anti-tank gun. I can't remember what. It knocked out two tanks, and they pulled me from the back out of reserve to knock out the anti-tank gun, which I did. With the 75mm cannon, they said it was behind a low wall. But the other tanks have been aiming at the wall. I lobbed an HE shell over the top of the wall, and it knocked the tank out, knocked the anti-tank gun out. And after that, what was after that? That's right, the tank I was in took the lead. And that's when my mind got blank. Because the next thing I remember from that was being in Brussels, in the back of a 3-ton lorry with the rest of the spare crews. I don't know how I got there or what happened between then and being in Brussels. I got no recollection. But after that, it was then from after Brussels, when we went on to, I remember the next lot, is the Market Garden effort. That quick rush up through Belgium, Holland, to Nijmegen, to get the Nijmegen Bridge. Well, we passed through, the Guards Armoured led the way. Sherwood Rangers was right behind them. I was in the leading tank. Taking some doing. But anyway, I was in the leading tank, and we was what the Guards Armoured missed, we were knocking out, got on the way up Market Garden. When we got to Nijmegen, the Guards Armoured stopped, and us to the Sherwood Ranger, we went past them onto the Nijmegen Bridge, and I was in the leading tank. As far as I could see, the bridge was clear, but orders came through the radio to turn back from the bridge because the bridge was mined and would blow up any minute. So that's the story of the bridge too far. If we had gone on, the film Bridge Too Far would never been made. But then again, I might not be to tell. Well, we did a lot of work around Nijmegen.
Like what?
Action, trying to, well, knock out German tanks or whatever. I'm just trying to put it into perspective now. It was in Nijmegen quite a while, actually, going out little forays with the 82nd Airborne, American Airborne. That's right. That's right. When we left, we came off the Nijmegen Bridge, and we went to help the 82nd Airborne round. What was the name of the place now? Any one of the villages roundabout, and we saw the American Airborne. We gave them what we got. They needed cigarettes and food and drink, and we shared with them what we got. Such a lot went on then. We stayed there for quite a while, actually. In fact, I came on leave for 7 days, but of course it's just stalemate. But after I got back, there was plenty of action going on. It's such a I know we went into jail. Oh, there's one little story you might like to know about. Well, with the 82nd Airborne, they'd run out of food, we'd run out of food, but close by was a warehouse with German food in it. So we was going to the one end of the warehouse getting supplies, and the Germans were coming in the other end getting supplies. A little skirmish in the middle, and we both went off with what we could get.
What do you remember about the skirmish?
Not a lot, really. Once we got out of the tanks, of course, and went into the warehouse with small arms and had a few shots at one another and went out our separate ways. But to tell you one thing, if you like cigars, don't try German ones because they're horrible.
Mr. Beddow, during your time in combat, were you ever wounded?
No, not even a scratch.
And can you tell me how many tanks did you go through during the war?
How many tanks I was in? Oh, I lost about 6, I think, something like that.
What would be the usual cause of losing a tank?
Well, main target was knocking out German tanks.
No, I'm saying, but you said you went through 6 tanks in the war?
No, well, I was blown out to 6 tanks, put it that way.
Can you take me through the first time that happened? Where was that and what happened?
That was in Normandy itself. What happened with that one was we went over a mine and blew the tracks off. And so we escaped from that. We got out of the back of the tank and followed the tank tracks out so we wouldn't get any more mines. And then after that, difficult to say really, because it's so far back. Yeah, I've tried to remember.
All the tanks that you went through, were they all lost from?
Oh yeah.
I'm saying, were they all lost because of the tracks getting messed up, or did any of your tanks take a direct hit?
Take direct hits, mostly in the engine department. So that was why we all managed to get out. But
so did everyone survive in all of your tanks?
But the last one, what I remember mainly, that's the one that's most vivid in my mind, is the last tank I was blown out of. It was in Germany itself. I can't remember the name of the place. Round about by Cleves, somewhere, that area. I just started off with, yeah, it was going into an attack, like the South Squadron was going into attack. Again, I was leading tank. Just in front of us was a hunting tank, what was it? Reconnaissance. And we went down this main road and suddenly the honey tank was hit and burst into flames. Only the tank commander got out. I could see what had happened. There was an SP, that's a self-propelled gun. I knocked out the honey tank, and I was trying to get focused onto it, but the tank commander, a young lieutenant, he'd backed our tank behind another building, so he blocked off my view and I couldn't see anything. All I could see was a house on the other side of the road, which I shoved a shell into, and nothing happened on that. That was stalemate for a while, and then a squadron commander said they'd try another way round, so they left out. So instead of being leading tank, we were the last tank. And as we followed the rest of the squadron, we were hit in the engine compartment. Now, here's the funny part. I knew we'd been hit with a clang. I waited a few minutes, nothing happened, so I started to get out of the tank. And I was passing the tank commander, and he said, "Where are you going?" And I pointed to the back of the tank, which was just a mass of flames. Smoking. Now, he didn't know what was happening. So he said, "Oh, bail out." So we all got out of that tank. And we followed a road, what we was hoping led to safety. But there was a jeep coming past, and they said, "Jump on, we'll give you a lift." Oh, we did jump on, but only for about 5 minutes, because then the German mortars found us and was mortaring all the way around. So we had to get off the jeep and fall flat on the ground. And when the mortars fell, we had to explode all the way around us. And then as they stopped, I shouted to everybody, "Get up and start running." We started running, and then I heard the shells coming over again, and I said, "Get down." So we all got down, and this went on till we got out of range of the mortars. And that's the most vivid one I remember. But the others are a vague memory. Well, that's about it, I think. But, and after that, I was around Cleves and that area, then up to the Rhine itself. I don't know many people knew about this, but along the banks of the Rhine, we had canisters of oil set on fire, so the smoke was covering up any actions we were doing. And then we went to found our way to a place called Gok. Now, here's the part. I don't know anything else after that until I got to Antwerp. Well, I was sent for a rest, as far as I knew. But from the Rhine, I don't know. I don't know anything else. That's as far as I got. This time I spent in Antwerp till the end of the war. And then from there I went to the first RTR after the war. That was in Berlin. And in Berlin, I had some of the nastiest jobs you could wish to have. As a gunner, protecting, as reporters, when they went round the Russian sector, in a jeep or something like that. And I was supposed to be the bodyguard with an empty Sten gun. But after that, it was just any jobs came up. Wanted a gunner to look after people. Or when the Cold War was on, the coal trains from Hamburg up to Berlin was put on guard in them. As a funny incident happened there because I was on guard duty with another fella. We were going around the train checking to see if this is all right. And two girls stepped out, German girls stepped out. They wanted to get to Berlin. So we knew the Russians would come on the train while we were going through to see what was going on. So we put the girls in the top bunk, and I sat on top of the girls. when the Russians came into it to see everything was all right, and they just missed the girls, so we took the girls up to Berlin, and that was just one incident what happens after the war. There was 3 tanks. Well, we were leading tank. We just joined the Shield Rangers from the 24th Lancers. We were the 3 leading tanks. Lieutenant Cameron was in one. I don't know I don't know. See, no, I don't want to say this. The sergeant who was in charge of my tank had been sent back for some reason, and we had another sergeant, and I don't know his name. And then there was Lieutenant Cohen and the other tank. There were 3 tanks abreast. Well, it could have been in wood, it could have been an orchard, I don't know. But suddenly, the tank on my left went up in flames. That was where my 2 mates, Ron Baxter and Fred Ely, got killed in that particular count. Joe Pelter got out. He was all right. Robbie Robinson came out with his foot off, and Lieutenant Cameron, it was his first time in action, had pieces of metal in his legs, but they got out and they went back to the stations. As I say, the one side on the other tank went up, me in the middle, missed. They didn't touch us at all. The German gunners, they missed us. We backed off, but we didn't know it. But there was a sunken lane behind us, and we sank straight into the sunken lane and stuck. Couldn't move, but nobody could see us either. The banks were so high, they hid the tank for the German gunners, so we got away with that one.
So where were you guys headed when this happened?
Oh, we were heading into, I don't know, we were attacking a village, and we were coming through the wood. I can't remember the name of the village.
And so you were on your way to the village,
yeah.
And then what happened?
They opened for anti-tank guns, opened fire. And the 2 tanks either side of me was knocked out, and we dropped into the sunken road, so they missed us.
What happened to the men in the 2nd tank that was knocked out?
I don't know. I was too busy helping with the other tank, where my mates had been killed, and Robbie Robinson has got his foot off. And Lieutenant Cameron, who was in the tank, his legs were wounded and could hardly walk. So we had to help him to a first aid station. We did, our tank crew.
Did you get out of the tank?
Get out of the tank. Well, there's nothing we could do.
So was this after the sunken road?
Into the sunken road.
I'm saying after you went into the sunken road, you guys got out of the tank to help them?
Help them out, yeah.
But what happened to the men in the other tank?
It got hit, went up with flames and smoke. I don't know what happened to them. I was able to knock out about half a dozen German tanks.
Tell me about your field of vision as a gunner. What can you see as a gunner?
Well, it was a periscope. I've told you before about periscope. And it gives you, how much do I say? I could see quite a distance, about 1,000 yards. I mean, that's easy. And put it across, you could put across about, well, it's hard to visualise that because the distance between them. But you could see quite a good of the countryside, quite a bit of it, and you could pick out different targets. You could see infantry moving about for a start. Machine gunner was what you use there, and any tanks you saw fired solid shot or high explosive, depends on type of tank.
In your periscope, were there any crosshairs?
Oh, that's it.
I mean, explain to me, for someone who knows nothing about this.
Oh, yeah.
How would you,
now,
as a gunner,
I'll tell you.
Can you explain how you aim at a tank?
Yeah, well, the periscope was about 3 or 4 inches wide, and in depth, be about 2 inches. Well, in the right-hand corner was the telescopic lens. So you could pick up, and on the telescopic lens was crosswires, and that's where you did it. And the crosswires was, before you start anything, you'd see and A, the guns we record it, C and A, test and adjust. I mean, you put a piece of cotton across the muzzle of the gun, so it formed a crosswire, and you put that onto some sharp object, edge of a building or something, and you adjusted your telescope to the same point of aim, which would be about 300 yards, 300 or 400 yards away.
But how do you have time to do that if you see a German tank?
Well, you do that before you start off with that. You see now the gun before you go into action. Make sure. So you're hoping. The first time you put your crosswires onto a German tank or anywhere, the gun will fire and hit that target at the same point. And that's what happened.
Now, as a gunner, do you also have access to a machine gun, or those are the...
There was a machine gun, and the tank was operated by the gunner. We had buttons on the feet, on the bottom of my feet, under my feet, and the one button was for the main gun, and the other button was for the machine gun. Now the radio operator loaded the machine gun. When he ran out of ammunition, he put a fresh belt in. And same with the gun, he loaded the gun as well. German infantry used to try to, well, if you didn't understand normally, cornfields, they would try to creep through the cornfields and take you by surprise. So we used to spray the corn, ground level, with the machine gun.
Whether you saw the Germans there or not?
Whether we saw them or not. We just watched the corn to see which way it was waving. If it was waving the wrong way, you let fly. But you see how this, well, cornfields, you know, they wave with the wind and the breeze. Well, if they was going against the breeze, you know, those Germans coming through the cornfields. So you just sprayed them with a machine gun.
How close would you say German infantry were able to get to your tank?
Very close at times, especially at night. They used to infiltrate into the lager where we were, and if the tank turret was open, they'd lob grenades inside the turret.
Did you ever see that happen to other tanks?
No, I only heard about it. Because we had guards out, but sometimes the Germans could infiltrate through.
Now, the Germans had the Panzerfaust, which was an infantry weapon.
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys have any experiences against that?
Well,
it was like the Pia.
It's a Panzerfaust, I know that. Yeah. No, I've never come across it. One time I did fire the cannon because I don't like putting blokes down. But the tank commander wasn't very good. And he was supposed to give me the range of a group of German engineers that was carrying mines, they'd been laying mines somewhere. And I asked him for the range, and he couldn't give me the range unless he was busy doing something else. So I had to fire the cannon to find the range to fire the machine gun. And that was it. It just went over the top of the group of Germans, and they, of course, they ducked and started hiding behind trees. But I still hit them with the machine gun. In fact, I was cutting the trees down, they was hiding behind it. As they went behind the tree, I just machine gunned the tree until he fell over. And then they was exposed. And there was about 20 of them altogether, I think. I got every one of them. see them all fall down. And even when on the, I hate to do this. I had a machine gun them while I was lying on the ground. But that's a job I had to do. I had to do it. But I hate thinking about it now. When I think about it, I mean, our blokes coming back to this country in coffins. We thought about their wives and their kids. Where I'd just done exactly what they've been through, and it was Germans.
Can you talk to me about your living conditions inside of the tank?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. That's something. Well, we used to have little Tommy cookers in the side of the tank itself, and we used to have a tank of some water in there. We'd boil up and make a cup of tea inside the tank itself. Thing is, I can never remember having anything to eat. But what we used to have, when we had anything to eat, it was probably around midnight, and we could replenishing the tank with ammunition and petrol. And the cooks would come up and bring a Dixie of stew or something. And then we'd have a hot meal. But everything else we lived on mainly biscuits and things like that.
How would you guys go to the bathroom in a combat situation?
When you fire the shell, you get an empty case, and that's what you use.
For number 1 and number 2?
Yeah, two as well. It's because in the side of the tank there's always a porthole, and you can open that and sling the canister out. But that's the only way you could do it. Because I mean, in Normandy, once we started in action, we was in the tank. So I think we was in 5 days and 5 nights ready without getting out of the tank. I mean, that's what we could do. I mean, even at night, we stayed in the tank. It wasn't advancing or anything, but we stayed in the tank because you never know when the Germans were going to infiltrate through. 5 days we were like that at first. Yeah, but
Where would you guys sleep at night?
in the tank.
Talk to me about, I mean, are you able to move your seat back at all? Or is it an upright?
Oh, no, straight seat. Well, what I used to do was I was on the seat and I just rest my head against the periscope. That's all. I don't sleep like that. I don't. We used to be always one awake in the tank. We used to take it in turns, having a snooze, and then somebody else would have a snooze.
Were there any specific times that you really thought to yourself you weren't going to make it?
No. Now, this is the funny part about it. I was never afraid, put it that way. No time at all. Never afraid. So I used to sing to myself. I was always singing when we were in action. Always singing to myself.
What would you sing?
Well, you wouldn't know him anyway.
What's that supposed to mean?
It was, what was it now? I'm just trying to think it back now. It's, I can't think of the song now.
Do you know the song?
It's Bing Crosby. Favourite at the time.
Was it Sing a Song of
Sing a Song of Sunbeams. That was it, yeah. That was the one.
Can you sing a little?
What, now? I doubt it.
Go.
Oh, no.
Sing a song.
Oh, here we go. Sing a song of sunbeams, let the notes fall where they may. Sing a song of sunbeams. I can't sing anymore now. That was it. I used to know it all the way through. The reason I was put into different tanks, I was a good gunner, and I could see things when even the tank commander couldn't see them.
What do you mean?
Well, he was supposed to have his head out the top, or looking around his periscope to find targets, but I found targets before he did. The German tanks, they'd got different types. There was the Mark IV. It was a small tank, really. There was the Panther, which was a bigger one, which our shells wouldn't penetrate. And then there was the Tiger, and then there was the King Tiger, and we could knock them out. The only way you could knock them out was from the back. I mean, I fired on quite a number of tanks and never knocked them out because their armour was too thick. And our shells weren't big enough. The only gunner we got that could penetrate the German armour was a 17-pounder. There was probably only one 17-pounder to a troop. So the rest of us were 75mm or a 6-pounder, which was not much good. But the 17-pounder could do a good job. But they could only be in one position. So in the other, I mean, they would probably, there'd be 4 tanks to a troop, and the 3 tanks with 75mm on would be in the front. A 17-pounder would be at the back. And when we found targets that we couldn't knock out, used to bring the 17-pounders up to the front. And you can bet your life, when the 17-pounder went to the front, it was fired on straight away. And most often it was knocked out before we could use it. So we had to manoeuvre our 75mm tanks round so we could get to the back of the German tanks and knock them out from the back, because that's where their armour was thinnest.
Were you ever strafed by the German Luftwaffe?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. And we were also bombed once by the American Air Force. The Luftwaffe was mainly Messerschmitts come down there with machine gunning. I never come up against Stukas anyway. But
what kind of damage would the Messerschmitts do?
I was just firing machine guns mainly, which couldn't do much damage against the tanks. But they would come swooping down. But we weren't bothered about them. It was the Stukas with the bombs that was a problem.
Did that ever occur?
Never occurred. Not where I was anyway. Americans, they came from the back of us. It was only happened once. We was on the start line, moving across the start line. We had yellow recognition panels on the backs of their tank, sort of cloth, was spread out so that they could be recognised by the Air Force. But they couldn't recognise it because they was dropping bombs all around us. They only knocked one tank out. That was all.
What happened to the crew?
I didn't get out.
How close was that tank to your tank when it got knocked out?
Oh, it was that foot. What was that, about 7,500 yards, something like that.
So what did you guys see?
Well, we couldn't do anything until they sort of finally recognised the yellow panels on the back of the tanks, and they fled off after they dropped their bombs. Well, there was bombs dropping all the way around the tanks, but they just hit the one.
Where would the Germans usually put the tank mines, and how would you guys try to stay clear from them?
I couldn't see really. It was up to the tank commander really to look out for that sort of thing.
But do you know, were there any strategies that the Germans used when they hid their mines?
Well, they tried to hide them, but of course, when you bury a mine, there's bound to be some disturbance to the soil. And that's what they looked out for. Any disturbance in the ground, and avoid it. But a lot of the times, the sappers, the engineers would go forward and that was with their mine finding equipment and clear the way before we went through.
Did you have any experiences against German snipers?
Snipers? Oh yeah. After the tank commanders. Well, as a tank commander, round his turret, he got a little cupola with periscopes in, and he'd use them to look around and he could move them round. But the thing is, that wasn't very good for viewing. It was very thick glass. So they used to stick their heads up out the turret, and that's what the snipers were after.
But no, all of your tank commanders were okay.
Yeah, they all ducked down. When we were going into action, they kept their heads down. And just, like a prism all the way around. And they used to look through them. But if they want to see anything clear, they got to pop their heads out the top of the turret. But they'd be very wary on that. They got helmets. I've been tankmen, they don't wear helmets. You see them on film, was wearing helmets. We never wore helmets. Just our own berets.
What weapons did you guys use? What personal weapons did you guys have in case you got out of the tank?
I had a Sten gun. Like a Tommy gun. All the others had sidearms, revolvers in holsters on their belts.
Why did you have a Sten gun?
I was a gunner. That was the difference. The gunners always had Sten guns, and everybody else had revolvers.
What do you remember about the unreliable nature of a Sten gun? Wasn't it very, if you set it somewhere, it would go off?
If you bang it on the floor, yeah. If it was cocked and you banged it on the floor or caught it anywhere, it went off, yeah. So, it was unreliable.
But besides that time in the factory, or not at the factory, the warehouse?
In the warehouse, we had Sten gun then.
Maybe it wasn't.
And other blokes had revolvers.
Were there times that you used the Sten gun other than that?
No, never used. I never. Well, when I got out of a tank, I never took it with me.
Why not?
So I was too fast getting out of the tank. I got time to get rid of that, get hold of that as well. I used to have a little pack at the side of me containing cigarettes and chocolate and biscuits, ready to get out when I escape. But I never took one with me. I just got out of the tank.
Were there other specific times you remember seeing tanks around you getting hit from SPs or German tanks?
Oh yeah, every time I went into action, somebody got knocked out.
What would be the usual cause what would usually cause these other tanks to get knocked out?
Anti-tank guns mainly. 88s, we knew 88s, yeah.
And where would the Germans hide their 88s?
Ooh, all over the place. Usually on a ridge, behind, in sort of a small clump of trees or something like that. But a lot of times they'd just be out there in the open because they knew we couldn't reach them. Only with a 17-pounder. So what we had to do was, if we saw anti-tank guns there, the 88s, and when they fired at you, we knew there was 88s because the tank used to shake when it went past. And we would just get out of the way. Get into a copse of trees or encircle them, come in from the back. That's the only way you could do it. You couldn't face them from the front.
Did you guys take any German prisoners?
No, we never did. No. Of course, we left that to the infantry.
Well, none of the Germans ever tried to surrender to your tank?
No, I never saw it. Well, if they was trying to, they'd probably get shot. So you don't trust them.
I mean, but do you ever remember Germans coming up, putting their hands up?
No, never seen one. I was either running away or dodging about, but never seen one with their hands up.
What's it like when you're moving in a tank in a combat action, not knowing if there's a anti-tank gun getting a bead on you? You know, I mean, when you're inside of a tank, you're kind of trapped.
Oh, true, yeah.
And so,
trapped.
what's it like not knowing if you're about to get hit?
Well, I told you, I was never afraid.
Because you kept you're saying Bing Crosby songs made it so that you were never afraid?
No, never afraid, no. I mean, I can't explain it really.
So is that what all the soldiers should now listen to when they go overseas?
I mean,
that should make sure that be the national anthem.
I'll put it this way. I was on tank, one chap, I couldn't stand him. Because all the time he got he got his headphones on and the microphone in front of him, and he was shouting into it, "What's going on? Where are we? What we're doing?" And it's that and the other. I think got on your nerves. And that's the sort of thing that I didn't like that at all. But the rest of the time, I mean, whether they were the blokes that were afraid, I don't know. Whether they felt the same way as me. Well, I suppose you do when you've got all that metal around you, and small arms wouldn't do you any harm. But
Did you ever see Germans trying to shoot at your tank with rifles?
All the time when we was in action, yeah. But, well, they knew if they saw the tanks going to water and they had no tanks with them, they'd just turn around and run. It was the only thing they could do. And we just chased after them with a machine gun. Which when we come up against the German armour was the problem. We couldn't knock them out. Well, I did that one when I used to see the gunner's telescope. They just got out of the tank and fled. Same as what we would do.
Can you talk to me when British tanks would fire at German tanks?
Yeah.
You know, it's a tank versus tank battle. Usually, what's the distance between the tanks when you guys are firing at one another?
You can gauge it where when you're gonna, you have to gauge what your tank commander is supposed to do to gauge the distance, but most often not. They can't either. But you have to gauge the distance. And if the German tank is over 500 yards away, there's no point in engaging because you couldn't reach him. With their tanks, their guns, which could reach out over 1,000 yards, and we could only do about 500 yards. So what you did, you hope your tank commander could tell your driver to dodge it, zigzag, so that the German tanks couldn't sort of hone in on you, sort of thing.
Well, when you were firing at the German tanks, would they be a stationary target usually, or they wouldn't be moving?
No, they'd be stationary.
Why would they be moving?
As far as I know, they were stationary. They were set there in a defensive position, and we were in the attacking position. So they had the advantage. They could fire on us at 1,000 yards. We couldn't fire on them until it was 500 yards. So we had to zigzag.
To get closer?
To get closer.
And then would you be firing the gun while you were moving?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because you got electric traverse and a hand traverse. So whichever one was you most often like use electric traverse to get close to, and use a hand traverse to do your final sort of target practice, you know. I was say where item was on the turret, and inside the German turret, if you could hit it with a solid shot, the inside of the turret would flake off. And that's what we had to rely on.
To tell if it'd been hit.
Yeah. But of course, if you got a 17 pounder could penetrate was a 75mm wouldn't.
Please tell me about the different shells that you guys would use
The
and the
HE
difference.
HE was high explosive, which when it hit the target, it exploded. Was the armour piercing one, the AP, that penetrated the armour, didn't explode. Just it hit the tank, and most often not the vulnerable part is the engine, because that's you put a shot in there, it'll send it up in flames, and that's what happened mostly.
What's the noise like when your tank fires a shell?
Noisy, loud.
I mean, did you have earplugs or?
That we got earphones for internal. The tank commander he got control of his crew. We had earphones on, headphones, and that. But he was through the radio. He was in touch with the rest of the squadron, and with his he got two buttons on it on his microphone. The one was for internal, and one was for wireless. It was quite a big wireless set we had in there. Intercom and for, I forget the ranges now, about 5 or 6 miles or something like that. At that particular time, of course, it's farther now. So the squadron leader was in touch with his tank commanders, and his tank commander was in touch with their crew through the intercom. But most often not, I didn't wear my earphones.
I mean, what's the smell like inside the tank?
Well, when you fire the gun, it's horrible. There's the fumes off the cordite, But I said there's a porthole at the side of the tank. You just open it up and let the fumes go out.
What's the smell like of all those fumes?
Well, I don't really. Wasn't anything nice about it. It was I could have put it very sharp, acrid sort of smell. Made you cough. That's what I remember. Made you cough. That's it. But it soon cleared. When you opened the porthole, it soon cleared.
Hold this up to the camera, sir, and tell me. Okay, sir. What is this a picture of?
That's a picture of it's Coffin Corner, and it says vehicles must not stop here because it was not under fire from the German artillery. Yeah. And we stopped there because the bloke with the camera asked us to. I disappeared in the local paper.
Are you in this photo?
Yeah, the front.
Where?
Here. One in the front. First tank I knocked out. It was crossing a field in front of us, and we were in a wood. As he went across, I fired at it, and it knocked it in the engine with the armour piercing. It didn't stop, so I put an HE into the same hole as I put the armour piercing, and then that blew it up.
What do you remember seeing?
Well, it's just a tank in front, and it was so I fired with the AP. It didn't stop, so I fired an HE and put it in the same hole as the AP went into. It just burst into flames because I put the HE in the engine, and then it exploded and just set on fire.
How far away was the tank from your tank?
I'd be about 200 yards, something like that.
What were the most difficult types of tanks to knock out that the Germans had?
King Tiger, thick armour, and an 88mm gun. You couldn't get close enough. What you had to do was some tanks had to come in the front and give us attention, and the other tanks go around the back and fired into the engine compartment, which was thinner armour. If I saw a German tank crew getting out of tank, I wouldn't fire at them.
A knocked out tank.
And if the tank was knocked out, that was it. But the German crews, if they were still all right, let them go. But the Germans didn't do that for us. When they knocked out an English tank or Allied tank and the crews were getting out, the Germans would fire on them.
Did you hear about this, or did you see this happen?
So it happened. One of my mates in one of the little skirmishes we had, his tank was knocked out. He was the gunner. He scrambled out to the top of the tank, and as he got out the turret, he was fired on. A German machine gun almost cut him in two. And that was that. Oh, I know the name of that.
Tilly?
That place where Westland was his orchestra from. Yeah, that town.
I can't remember the name.
What's the name of the town you've come from? Utrecht. Is it Utrecht? Something like that. And that's where it happened anyway.
What was his name?
Is that Holland?
I couldn't tell his name. So he was in a different tank from me. He was I can't think of his name now. Well,
what was that like when you guys saw that happen?
Well, he just see where the fire was coming from and fired at it.
Do you know what happened to that German machine gun?
No. We were still occupied with other tanks, the German tanks around us. We didn't bother with the solitary machine gun. But I mean, by the time we got round to him, they'd gone. They used to fire a short burst and move. Well, they just caught him at the wrong time, just he was getting out of the tank.
But you guys were in the same area when that happened.
I was I was a couple of tanks behind him, I suppose, something like that. But I can't see the name of that. Maastricht, that's it. Just happened outside, outside Maastricht in Holland. Yeah.